Hola humanos, welcome to our ipsicafé scoping series where we take an idea and scope it live in real time, 1 hour at a time. My name is Alejandra, I am a strategist and community organizer, and we also have...
Hi, I'm Lizzie Lee, and I consider myself a systems thinker and a critical thinker, very curious about everything that surrounds me. And I have worked in engineering and project management all my life, and we are here to show you things that have worked for us every time that we have a new idea, a new project, or when we have a problem or a roadblock that has us stuck and let us to continue forward. So thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. So the first idea that we are taking on under this scoping series is finding a way to create a blueprint that allows us to intentionally build and interweave our networks so we can strengthen our communities and more effectively translate people power into structural change-making power. Last week, we had our first session where we started with a general brainstorm, and this is how far we got with that. We started making bubbles essentially within this bubble tool and capturing the different ideas that we had while we were just doing an open brainstorm. So today we're going to continue that brainstorm and perhaps start identifying some categories that they have in common. So as we always do, I added the time that we're starting at the top left. I assumed it was going to take longer to do this intro, but I'm going to put 8:02 local time in the Netherlands and as our starting time. We always do that so we can keep track of the details of the progress. And as Lizzie mentioned last time, because a lot of the times we think this takes longer than it actually does. So
I'm gonna let forward.
Yeah.
Are you sharing?
Am I sharing what?
Are you showing the bubbles or?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm showing the bubbles, and I was going to.
I can see them. I see you, but I don't see the sharing.
Yeah, I think on the YouTube channel is where you would see it.
Okay.
Yeah, or on the bubbles themselves, which I think you also have open. But yeah, so we're just gonna keep on bubbling. Last time we talked, so we're looking at interweaving networks and creating a blueprint for that. So last time we were talking about how that possibly happens, how those networks build. But today I kind of wanted to give a bit more of a focus into how we're gonna go about the blueprinting side. So what kind of information do we need to gather, and what kind of things can perhaps, help inform the path for us. Lizzie, do you have anything that you would like to add before we just jump into it?
No, just as a recap, like Alejandro mentioned at the brainstorming that we did was a brainstorming that was a free flow. Sometimes we get too caught up even in the brainstorming trying to organize the ideas, and what we like to emphasize is that it is anything that comes to mind, anything, even if you think that you may have repeated that idea before, just put it there if it has different words or different definition, because it is important to capture everything. So that's something that is really, really critical for the brainstorming process.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna hold with just put the project up real quick. I just want to check something with the screen that I'm sharing to make sure that it's updated. So 1 second. Ya va, Lizzy, que estoy... tuve que cambiar una cosa. No, ¿qué pasó? Sí, @Aponwao Ideas. One second. Kawan. Got what, Mom? Got what, Mom? Ok, perfecto. Continuamos. All right.
As you can see here, all these bubbles, now that we have it there are the different things that came to mind. And at some point in the process, we think that, okay, I don't have any new ideas. That doesn't, and then we can continue to the next step. That is what Alejandra mentioned that we make to start categorizing today. But there are always room for bringing new ideas. This is not like, oh, you didn't think that idea in step one, you're done. No, this is a very open mind process and very, very flexible.
Yeah, and as Lizzy was saying that, I got to thinking, as I mentioned, of the process and how we were going to go about approaching this blueprint. And the reality is that most likely people are doing this all the time, right? People are weaving their networks in their communities to affect change for whatever shared purpose they find with those groups. So I think part of the process here for us is trying to figure out who is already doing this and how are they doing it. What do you think, Lizzy?
Yeah, no, and also just for you to have an idea of how these, because sometimes we start putting all this together and we don't know where we are going, and probably we don't know, but our end goal is like that purpose that we have on the top upper left corner. All these ideas, after several steps, are going to take us to a blueprint. So in a way, these are all the pieces that will get you to your final goal.
Exactly. And I'm doing my little trick to put on this side the what questions because they really help me.
Yeah, and also recap from one of our main tools for critical thinking is the 5W and H that comes originally from journalism, and we used a lot because Ale, that's where her bachelor's come from, or bachelor's is. So it is the what, the why, the who, the where, the when, that's the 5Ws, and the H, how. And it is not that there's an answer for one of them. There are many questions that you can ask with the what. there are many questions that you can ask. Maybe who is this for? Who is involved? Who doesn't need to participate? Who is affected? Who will provide funding? Who will, so you have many questions with every one of these W's, and the H is how. Also a lot of variations of the how. But this is a very simple tool that gives you, if you feel stuck in the process of ideas, you can use those to start asking more questions.
All right, so what are we asking? I put there, who is doing this? How are they doing it? I think obviously we'd have to think about maybe what, yeah, I'm trying to think of like what commonality, or like what is the point at which they kind of like meet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also for a how, we have processes, right? And those processes could be, if we have different organizations that, or different people have different processes for networking, or for, or for building activities to support that, or to generate that power. So the processes are important. That's some of the how things are done in different areas. Of what could be our network. So again, for example, I'm trying to find a bubble here that is communication channels, right? At top, we normally use also like the clock, like the hour, so we can find ourselves. For example, communication is like 1 o'clock. So communication channels, this could be a derivative of it, how we are going to communicate, or what are we going to communicate. So if you see that derives different actions, or could be different bubbles. What are the communication channels? What we will use. Another is how we will communicate that will generate a particular process for the network. So I don't know, Ale, what you suggest here, if we put like those specific, like how we will communicate, or communication channels, how and who, and also who needs to be communicated about what, right? So there are different ways of communication depending on the type of people. So think of those questions, and that's where the critical thinking comes. Think of those questions, how you answer each of those questions for the ideas that you have.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so I realized that at times we're talking about different things, and I thought maybe this was a good time to kind of point out the difference. I feel like because we're talking about interweaving networks, but we're also talking about us blueprinting how to interweave networks, right? So there's kind of two things that we're sort of brainstorming at once: how our networks interwoven, kind of what the logistics of weaving networks are, but we're also exploring, as kind of like the line of work that we do, how are we going about blueprinting that? Who are, who we would call the most knowledgeable people, the MKPs or the subject matter experts, like who are we involving in this process that would contribute or collaborate in this effort to blueprint this? So it definitely makes me think of like community organizers, right? Obviously. I'm going to add existing community organizers, existing maybe academics. Who else would have knowledge about this?
About community organizers?
No, not about community organizers. Do you know what I mean in the two different kind of things that we're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, you mentioned a question who would know about this?
So when we're thinking about what we do, right, we're thinking about identifying most like MKPs, most knowledgeable people. We're looking at
Right.
blueprinting how to interweave networks. Who would we consider these MKPs? And that's why one of them, I put community organizers. And that's why I was asking broadly,
Right.
who else would you think? So not who knows the most about community organizing,
Yeah.
who else, who could we talk to that would have insight into this? So maybe academics to some degree. What do you think?
And I think the one that we have at 9 o'clock, the communities themselves, even if they are not part of our network, because that will give us an input of what needs could be out there, right? So sometimes, and this happens a lot when we have these organizations that are trying to support and do better and make a difference, but sometimes it's like the idea that they or us have about how others should be helped, instead of what is the real help that the communities need, right? Because we want to have, as we mentioned, this is again not a network to have an Excel file with a database with a bunch of columns and crossing, oh, this person does this and this person does that. It is how we translate that power, that common power can be used to support communities too, right? So um, if we have a community, if we know we want to do social impact, positive social impact, and we have a community that has a need, they are not part of building a blueprint, but they are part of what we could be doing to translate our power to help them or how they want help. How or give
I
them
don't.
tools, give tools for them to,
Yeah, I don't know about because I feel like the way we're talking about this is in terms of almost like self-organizing. This is how people in their spaces kind of organize. So I'm not seeing it so much as a distant. I guess personally, um, as I'm going to help someone, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
Um, so I think in this effort, particularly when I talk about um, how we are interweaving our networks, I think of myself as part of these communities that are doing this. I feel like I'm talking to peers, are people who have spaces they occupy, want to exist in solidarity in some way, and want to figure out a way to do that in kind of a strategic way. So not only are we supporting each other, but we're also, like you were mentioning before, we're also building the structural power needed to actually affect and change our circumstances.
Right, and then probably I didn't use the best word, using the word help, but it is like uh, it's a twofold or multiple fold, if you will, that when we understand that, for example, and we had it there, like in the center, identification of needs, right? So we can have that. How do we support each other within the community, but also, what because this is not just and I see it as a tool for also future initiatives, right? So you have this network to support each other, but also we can be looking what is needed out there, right? And that's when we do that. And if we understand the surrounding environment that is so affected right now for many reasons, then we can have those people as our SMEs or as most knowledgeable people because they are living the situation, right? So it's an input that we could have in our network to find out what else we could do, not only to support ourselves, but to support others.
Yeah, definitely. I get into this like conversation with the two of us, and then I forget to bubble.
Oh.
So
Yes.
but let's try to summarize it. So I put asset mapping down because I do think the needs assessment part is usually central to some sort of organizing effort. There is some sort of need that often prompts action, right? But I also think there are a lot of strengths that are often overlooked. So I always like mapping the assets and the skills and the knowledge that exist within different groups, which is part of creating a bit of a strategy around, okay, how can we combine these skills, these assets, these abilities that we have into this sort of collective effort.
Right, and one of the things is after we have all these ideas, but like I'm gonna pick right now this identification needs. I don't know if it's moving in YouTube. Can you see it moving?
I can see moving.
Okay, so it's because for some reason when I see this Zoom it doesn't move at the same time. But this is something that we can have there. Once that we go with the next steps, we will be categorizing these things, and that could probably have like a fork that has two different ideas, and that could come later. Like, oh, okay, this is the identification of needs. Who's going to help us with that identification of needs? That is what Alejandro was mentioning, community organizers or academic or any most knowledgeable people that know about this. And the categories will help also to break some of these bubbles into different aspects. As I mentioned, communication channels will be one, definitely will be what communication channels will use, and another will be what processes or how we are going to communicate. That's two different things, but we have one bubble. We could have two bubbles if we want, but it doesn't mean that, oh, that bubble is one item or generates one action. So I want to be really putting emphasis on this because it is a process that is new for everybody because it's our own process, but that's what it means. One bubble could be two or three different particular actions that we could break them here to have them more clear, or they will break later. The process is very organic, and it will be telling us what we really will guide us where we want to go.
Thank you. All right, so one thing I like to do when I feel relatively stuck, which not that I necessarily feel stuck now, but I think it's a good practice, is with the question words, start breaking down specifically the different words in the purpose sentence at the top left. So we have, we're looking at blueprint, what is it to like blueprint? We're talking about building or interweaving. How are we looking at this? Who is building? Who is interweaving networks? What does it mean to do it effectively? What does people power look like? What does structural power look like? So there are a lot of definitions that come with this process as well, where we have to, with whoever this is happening with, we have to create some shared definitions, right? We have to figure out how we defined what kind of structural power we're looking for, how we decide what it means to have people power. Is it numbers? Is it impact? Is it, it can be different things. So I'm going to put, it might be on there because I don't remember from last time, but I'm going to put shared definitions on the board.
Yeah, that's great because that's a very good point. When we go further, we have our own definition of communication alignment because communication alignment is critical. It's so critical for because we are humans and we are all communicating, and communication in the global arena that we are now is getting more complicated. It should be easier, but it's not easier because not everybody has the same background, the same foundations, the same understanding, and the same definition. So it's critical for us and for any project or anything that anybody wants to do, ensure that everybody understands that definition of pencil means exactly the same for everybody. Even if pencil doesn't mean pencil for some, there has to be at some point a compromise when there's a definition and everybody understands that. So that then we have a deliberate um, understanding of what we are talking about. And this is very, very critical too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what do you think this could look like? If we're saying we have the purpose to blueprint a way to do this, what
Um,
does it look
I
like if, like, we're at the end? We just wrapped up the project. What does this look like to you? What do you think?
Yeah, for me, and I confess that I am a little bit biased for what I know, and I have gone, I want to say my background, I started working, I graduated from college 44 years ago, so that's a lot of time, right? So I have gone from paper to today. And we always had visuals, we always had maps because we had them. The ways how the maps were done 44 years ago is now it is so digital and so practical, but the concept is the same to have a visual. So I have these road maps. And the bias is that maps that you actually, Alejandra, have prepared, where we have our core purpose in the center, and then we have all our branches of the key functions, if you will, around that blueprint. So the blueprint is the center is our interwoven networks, and then we have legs and arms or arteries and veins coming out of that heart. Let's call it the heart with a bunch of things coming out of it. And the arteries and veins go to different places. And we could have in maybe a few weeks some examples of this mapping, but that's how I see it color coded, definitely, because the color code can show you like, okay, this branch is going to this particular area. This, when you start breaking this in the main, you go from the blueprint and then you start breaking it down in levels, and the last level is specific tasks and actions, but those levels have to be communicated, and that's what the alignment comes. A system, all that we have here in front, these bubbles, these are the elements of the system, right? And then we tie these elements to each other to see how they interact. So when we have all those ties around each bubble or how they go from to, we understand how this network is woven. And then at the end, it's a map with all these color coded lines, very organized, that you can see how the different powers or the different
Okay.
elements are, of our network is. How
Okay.
do you see?
Well, so that's, I feel like I go back to what we were talking earlier, that there's two different things. So all of this information, I feel like, will make up this project, like the blueprinting. But I'm thinking about the deliverable specifically. So what does that blueprint look like in terms of something that can be used to build community or to strengthen community or to interweave networks, right? Does that make sense? So I feel like it's I like the idea of the blueprint as a map, but I do feel like like I'm having a hard time visualizing it as something that can be, maybe like a board game. Because I'm trying to think about how people, because the idea about a blueprint is that it's not going to be, it allows for contextuality, right? It's going to be different how someone in X community in X place builds and interweaves their networks compared to somebody else in some other context in some other place. But the idea, go ahead.
No, of course, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of, we delivered this blueprint. Like how can it do that? How can it guide people through those steps? So like the idea of the map, and that's why I thought maybe like a board game, because you have to like make decisions. Are you building, maybe decisions about where you are, who you're organizing with, what kind of shared motivations you have, what kind of actions you're looking for, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be like it could be like a decision tree or something. When I was mentioning about the mapping is because there are different areas here, right? That we are mapping processes or communication or people. Or, I don't know how because we never know how it's going to end until we start categorizing and breaking this down. But we could have like those decision trees there in those parts of the map. Not sure, really not sure. Right now, for a blueprint, I see a visual um, that it is clear how the network is interwoven, and then
you don't have the network yet. You don't have the interwoven network yet. So how is it clear in your, I want to hear more about how it's clear for you. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like a method, it's a process, right? So it would be, it's clear how it will be interwoven. Do you know what I mean? Or am I confusing you?
I think you are confusing me. I don't know. I again, and I mentioned I could be falling in my own biases, but I do believe that that a map, like the blueprint, is a blueprint, right? Being an engineer is a drawing, right? It's a drawing that will take me somewhere. And that's what I see those arteries and veins going to the categories that we have defined, that we will define here, and that other people will define according to their context. Absolutely right. This is not a template that anybody that is going to build a network or interweave a network is going to do it this way. It's like code. It's like software. You can code a software to do one thing. For the same thing, you're going to have different coding. So it's a different map. But for me, this blueprint with the categories that we have here would be how we break them down. I think that we probably will answer that question maybe better later when we have more definition of the categories, and then how they are grouped together, and then that idea that you have of the board game or the decision trees, or yes, no, no, you can do some sort of simulation there. You can put it in that very blueprint that will generate separate blueprints. I mean, probably you will have a breakdown of that big map. It's like the zoom in, right? You have a big map, and then that shows you how you are going to do this, and then you have a zoom in. Now let's go to this one, and this will have a particular board game or decision simulation sort of tool, whatever it is.
Okay. Yeah, so I put that up there. But definitely agree.
Yeah,
I like it to be a visual for sure.
yeah, definitely for sure. And that's bias as an engineer. A blueprint is a drawing. I wonder, and I think that comes because before you have the techniques gave you all the drawings were blue. I remember because I am, because my dad was an engineer, so 44 years of my career plus seeing more years my dad doing drawings. The drawings were always in blue, so maybe that's where they come from. The
I
name,
think
but
it
it's a
is where
map.
it comes from.
Yeah, but yes. Yeah, it comes from that, but I think it's because you could have blue drawings in black, but I think probably the technique
Not
and the
originally, I don't think, because like I think the prints must. Maybe I mean obviously neither of us knows the history, but I think it's a must have been some sort of ink situation.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember all the blueprints that I have seen. They were blue, like old ones. And I did a research of of uh, of a lighthouse in Washington State in the peninsula and it was in the Olympic Peninsula. And I went to the Library of Congress and I had the original blueprints of all the terrain and how they were going and the design of the lighthouse, and they were all blue. And I'm talking, this is 1885 or so. So it's just like 140 years ago. So yes. So anyway,
I
I
think
agree. It's a map, and that how we break that map. I like how you put it. Like it's a map or it's a board game, it's a decision tree. It is something, and this is important because that's the brainstorming, right? I could have an idea because my own experience and my own biases and what I know how I like things. You have yours, and that's what the important thing of bringing other people because then we share all what we have in our heads. Every head is different, and then we find the best way to to do this initiative.
yeah. So I one thing that I like also about the idea of the blueprints as a visual um, is the like the potential for accessibility, like broad access, right? Um, because in terms of reaching many groups, it being language specific is immediately going to exclude a huge portion of the population. Maybe because they um, don't speak the particular language that we work in, or they might not use written language. So I like the idea of the the blueprint that that we ideate as something visual because I think that can really broaden the access
Yeah,
that we
and
have.
visual, yeah, and visual not necessarily has a piece of paper. Of course, you have it in a piece of paper and you keep it as a record, as a document. But you can have a big board, and in the board, you can have it, and that's the flexibility because then you can find, okay, this didn't work here, and then you can do, your updates or, start accommodating things that initially they looked good, but really now you have you can find issues or but many ways to have that visual.
Yeah, for sure. I think that'll be part of the process. But all right, let's continue going through kind of the purpose sentence. So we talked, I think we focused a bit on blueprinting. What is that going to look like? How we're going to get there. I think that will require involvement of a lot of people who, like we talked at the beginning of the session, will have um, experience already building, strengthening communities, interweaving networks, and having real impact, affecting real change in that way. So there's plenty of people that we can learn from there. And then where next, Lizzie?
Yeah, and the interweaving is pretty much that alignment. The communication alignment plays a big role there because it's not only communication alignment, but the alignment with all the elements because
But
it
in
is
terms,
different. just following the words and just rehashing on some things here, like, Alejandra, I'm gonna bring this here. Like, she was knitting, and she had, like, all the yarn loose, right? And this is all the elements are this bunch of yarn loose. But when you start putting, like, together, it starts getting, like, with consistency, right? It starts getting, um, now it is a sock or a blanket or a scarf. So it gets shape, and that's what the structural power is. It has structure. Now it is something solid. It is not a bunch of loose yarn that doesn't mean anything. So that interweaving is also how you interweaving with purpose, right? It is not like you're gonna grab something here and start tying it without any intentions or sense. It has to have a purpose so that you get something with a structure. Unless you want to do something very creative and you start trying new things, but the interweaving is important. How you are going to take all these elements and you're going to connect them together to have that solid structure.
Yeah. One of the things that I want to put up here that is something we always look at is in terms of us running this as like a project, we always think of, in traditional project management, the 10 areas of knowledge. So that means that we're defining our scope, we're defining our timeline, we're defining our, cost, we're defining what resources we're going to need. So I can put all 10 areas of knowledge down, but I usually just use this bubble because we're very familiar. We're very familiar with that.
Yeah, but thank you for bringing that, because that's really important. So if somebody doesn't know about these 10 areas of knowledge, they came from Project Management Institute, which is the institute that has standardized, like, the best practices in project management. They have been away a little bit now from the area of knowledge as a key thing. They still have it, and I have used them for 44 years, and honestly, they have been uh, an excellent tool. Like, nothing escaped from your projects if you have that. So as Ali's writing, the scope, time, cost, quality, resources, risk, communications, integration. And integration, it is something that everything, um, all these items get integrated. So you have them, you have there the 10 areas, and when you have them, and you go and then you say the scope is what we're doing, right? We're scoping what are the boundaries of our initiative or for problem to be solved, and what is in, what is out, what we are doing and what we are not doing. That's part of the scope. What we are not doing is important because you have to define that, especially when you have a lot of people involved, so that you know what is going. You have the timing, schedules, when things have to happen, the cost, budget, quality also. I mean, and especially here, I mean, quality is critical. What you have in your network has to be, it has to keep some requirements that you comply with, some requirements that you establish yourself. Resources, risk. What risk do we have? And risks definition here being threats and opportunities. This is the traditional risk is look at the bad things, but really in ISO for risk is threat and opportunities. You have positive risks or negative risks. Communications, we have talked a lot, partners, integration, and procurement. When you have to buy things, suppliers, maybe you need to buy a software, or you need to buy, or pay a venue to have an event. So those, when you have that bubble that Alejandro just wrote there, use it for every single initiative that you use. Put it there as part of the template. I think that probably, Alejandro, we could bring it, and just that will facilitate also the brainstorming. So it is not only the 5WNH or 3 ideas, but also think in the terms of all these 10 areas of knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. I always, those two lists, these 10 areas and the question words, I always keep in my back pocket because they're very handy to kind of stimulate the conversation and the thinking around a new idea. So maybe let's go to the who a little bit. We talked a little bit about the MKPs, but who else do you see as potentially being involved in this project? Not in interweaving, but specifically in the blueprinting.
In the blueprinting?
Yeah, and what we're taking on.
I think we mentioned some. I mean, we have the resources there.
Maybe we can start categorizing, and that way we can identify kind of the, what do you think? The who's?
I think where we put interests, so it could be people with same interest. That's where you're going right now, that idea?
Precisely.
Okay, yeah. So it could be, so now if you see the question interest there, or the bubble like a little bit below 9 o'clock underneath communities, that interest could be that it could be people with the same interests, or could be also, and sometimes we have bubbles that belong to two different categories, and this is what I was mentioning before, that we can break them in two, right? We can say interests. What are the general interests that we have to build a network? Could be one, right? Maybe you want to build network for specific area, and that's could be areas of interest. But another would be, who are the people that I can have a network with it in different interests. So
Okay.
interest, I think interest will go as in yellow too, but also it could break to another category.
Okay, so maybe let's give a bit of context. So what we do usually when we run out of kind of our brainstorming, we move on to the next category, which is the next step, which is categorizing. So we'll start just by grabbing any random bubble, and we'll give it some way to identify it. If I'm doing this in the computer, I go by color, but sometimes I'm doing this by hand with a pencil. So I'll just do little symbols. I'll note a category that's asterisks, and I'll note another category that's hearts or spirals or whatever it may be, because sometimes I just don't have access to colors. But on a computer with the whiteboard, this is kind of the easiest way to tell them apart. And we start creating categories without much stress. So some things group in some ways, and every brain will do this differently. The only thing that matters is just going through the process, because what we're doing here is we're starting to process this information, and whatever way you go about doing it, as long as you follow the process, things will fall into place, as I think it can be said. So I think I was gonna put humans for yellow. Lizzie, did you wanna title one as interests?
Yeah, or areas, actually, interest or areas, or
areas of anything in particular, or just areas generally?
it could be areas of interest, actually, because areas, areas by itself doesn't say much, and you don't have to define all the categories first, and then you just go again. This continues being free flow, everybody. So, for example, oh, I just saw at 5 o'clock that it says who is already doing this, so I know that's a human. We are going to look, and then we put that in yellow. But at the same time, I can find something that is a particular work industry sector at 8 o'clock. I think that could be an area of interest, maybe, So we can color, and then if we find, oh no, if we as we go and start putting new categories, we can think, oh, maybe work industry and sector will go to another category once that we defined it. Again, as Ali said, don't get attached, don't get hung up on this. Right now, continuous free flow. This continues being part of the brainstorming process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that when I started using this process, I would get very stuck, not just on how to group the categories, but on what the category was called. So I would get stuck on, is it humans? Is it partners? Is it contributors? It doesn't matter. And that's why I started having kind of more general names. And that's why I name it humans, because what we're actually going to refer to these humans as a collective isn't as important as it is figuring out that they are one category. So the name of the category, none of this is final. It can be edited as you process the information, but anything that makes sense as to why two bubbles come together is a completely valid temporary name for that category. So right now we have humans, we have areas of interest, we have a few more minutes. So I think we should identify some of these and then, and then wrap up for the day. So
yeah, I think 10 o'clock existing networks probably is also humans, because if you have an existing network, it's.
But this is humans. This is humans for the project of blueprinting, right?
Oh, okay.
So this is humans that we're going to interact with for this project, right? I guess existing networks would. I just wanted to say that to clarify, but I think existing networks could fit under that, because within our existing networks, we're going to look at. Right. We already have people in our existing networks that do this, so I think that's fair. But I just wanted to point out that this is an example of how sometimes something can be part of multiple categories, because as we're talking, eventually as a category around the subject matter, around weaving networks or building community is going to emerge, and existing networks might also be a part of that in a different context. So we'll show you when that time comes how each of us deals with that, because we both deal with it differently. It's the beauty of this process. But I wanted to leave that caveat, and then we'll continue. Maybe we can give a few more colors before we finish today.
Yeah. And piggybacking on that, for example, at 2 o'clock, but not below communication cadence, it says find humans who inspire you. We could think it's humans, but if it's to build the network, that probably is not it would not be yellow. So that's what Ale was saying. Just because it says humans who inspire you doesn't necessarily belong to the yellow category, because the yellow categories is for the humans that are humans who are going to work with this blueprint. So probably find humans who inspire you could be areas of interest, because we are not, if they inspire me, it's because it could be tied, and anything has to have a logic for you. It has to relate to you. If I am doing this for us, I would say find humans who inspire you. I would say it's areas of interest, because I will find humans that inspire me in a particular area, right? So that's how I would see it.
Okay. Do you want me to color it green?
For now, I would color it in green, and I would color green also interests that is above the work industry sector, like in between 8 and 9 o'clock. And if we want to give another color before we leave, we let's put a word like
8 and 9 o'clock where?
Below communities, between 8 and 9, interest green. Mm-hmm. So maybe a color that is like I like that, like the things that are the core values of our network, and I would like to have maybe pink. And it would be understanding of diversity, for example, or accessibility. So these are things that we really want it's a core value for us, right? For the network.
For how we work? What do you mean?
We build it, because the blueprint has to have a foundation. So probably is the foundation of the network or the values. I like to call it values, because so we have their inclusion, we have the accessibility. Why we are doing this? Why we are putting inclusion there? Because we want this to be an inclusive network. We want to understand diversity because it's a value. We want accessibility because it's a value for for people that not everybody has the same access to things. So those probably, that's a category that came to me. Um, so inclusion is below database, like in between 12 and 1, but below communication channels. So that's for people to have an idea of those, how we start putting colors or categories. Um,
Yeah.
and everybody will have different categories. And again, that's okay, because this has to speak to you. This has to speak to you, or to the team that is putting this together. And this is ideal to do with more than one person, right? Or to, a group. If this is a network, the ideal is to have participation from other SMEs. You may not have them now. I know that we're running out of time, but for example, that MKP, most knowledgeable people that we have at 4 o'clock, we can go and have a one-on-one with somebody and say, hey, I was mentioning Allison, for example, Mariela, the last session, that it is an activist in Pacific Northwest. I could have a one-on-one with her to understand how she has done this before, or to understand other things that will allow me to add elements to the system, add experience that she has already had.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think if there was anything other that came up that I wanted to put under, because the areas of interest, I want to put like the religion, culture, geography under that. But I think because of the name, I'm getting stuck because those aren't areas of interest. But there were, they're like areas around which we organize or we gather.
I think that's a different category. I agree with you. It is like what everybody brings. It's like everybody brings something about their culture. Everybody brings something about their religion, and I don't know if it's in part of the group dynamics that all these play a role, but I think that they belong to one specific category that I don't know the name, but let's not fight it as you said the name. Let's call it like I want to call it right now what everybody brings. It's not a good name for a category, but it is like the different personalities, like because we have to work with everybody as like meet people where they are, right?
Wouldn't that be part of wouldn't that be pink for you? Because I personally, if I may, for the part for religion, culture, geography, location, initially it was around these are ways that communities organize, or at least that's how I added them initially. There is community around religion because of culture. You might have already existing communities. There are existing communities based on location, just because you live in the same place. There are communities. So that's why I was tying it to work to the areas of interest in green, because communities form because of your industry or because of your work sector. You might have, you have that point of commonality. So this will be something to explore during our next session. We have 1 minute to go, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen and stop sharing the bubbles. We're going to continue next Tuesday, March 31st, same time, same place. That is 8 o'clock in the evening, Netherlands time. And next week, that will be 11 in the morning, West Coast time in the US. And